Good afternoon. So I know we're all, eating and just getting settled, but just give me a little bit more. I have a 4-month-old at home, so I'm running on concealer and caffeine. Good afternoon. There we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're thrilled to see you here today. My name is Brigida Mack, and if you watch local news at all over the past couple of decades, you likely saw me. I spent about 20 years here in Charlotte doing local news, and now I've sort of moved into motivational speaking and hosting and emceeing like this. But when Aaron reached out to me, I was thrilled to be here today, in part because alcoholism has touched my family. My paternal grandfather struggled for much of his life with alcoholism and finally got sober the back end of his life and really became instrumental with AA in the upstate of South Carolina. So when she reached out to me, it was a no-brainer for me to be here today. And I hope that you guys are enjoying lunch without masks, right? It's kind of weird seeing the lower half of people's face, right? After 3 years of constantly masking up. Well, most of us. And so we're thrilled that you're here today and that you're spending a little bit of your afternoon with us. I have always been passionate about health and a dedicated mental health advocate. I believe very strongly in therapy. I myself am in therapy, and it's a game changer. I used to say that like in hushed tones, like, oh yeah, I have a therapist. Now I'm so proud of that fact, because when you begin doing your work, it really opens up new avenues. And if you have anyone who's ever struggled with mental health or alcoholism in your family, you know how instrumental therapy can be. And so I'm committed to helping people live their best lives and lending my platform and my voice to that. So it was important for me to be here hosting this health education program for Healthy Charlotte Alliance. And as many of you know, Healthy Charlotte Alliance is a nonprofit founded some 82 years ago with a mission that's quite simple: to improve the health and quality of life for all people in Mecklenburg County. And the Alliance really works to fulfill that mission in 3 really critical ways. 1, through health education programming. Right? We know that when you know better, you do better. So getting experts together to deliver these educational programs on relevant and timely healthy topics is key. If you can get the word out, if you can arm people with the information and the resources, you know that that's a big part of the battle. The second way in which the Alliance does that: volunteer programming, engaging members who volunteer their time through meaningful service opportunities with local health nonprofits. And then third, grant making. We know that it takes resources, financial resources to be frank, to allow the Alliance to continue to have the impact that it does. So financially investing in health programs that demonstrate a proven impact in the community. And so really it's about health education, service, investment, and most importantly, impact. And before we get to the program and our presenters today, which I'm excited to bring them up in just a moment, I want to take a moment to thank the incredibly generous partner that the Alliance has in making today possible: the Mecklenburg County ABC Board, without whom this program would not have been possible. So shout out to Julia Roddy Paul. Are they here? Yes? Stand on up. Don't be shy, or wave your hand. Yep, there we go. Here at the door. All right, awesome sauce. Of course, we're probably all familiar with our local ABC store. They still card me. And I'm thrilled about that. Like when you get to a certain age and you're like, can I see your ID? Yes, you can, right? But what you may not know about the Mecklenburg County ABC Board is that it has invested more than $100 million in local nonprofits to address substance use disorder and find solutions to lead to improving the health and wellness of Mecklenburg County residents. Of course, for a lot of us, going to the ABC store, it doesn't bring up any issues, right? We can celebrate and move forward. But there are members of our community that struggle. and they're closer to us than we realize. We likely know someone in all of our circles or our pods coming out here, the pandemic, that struggled with substance abuse. So very thankful to have a partner in the Mecklenburg County ABC Board. At this time, I actually want to bring up Julia Roddy Paul. She is Director of Community Engagement and External Relations with the Mecklenburg County ABC Board to share a bit more. So y'all show her some love this afternoon.
Well, I want to thank everybody, the Healthy Charlotte Alliance Board and the members, as well as the audience for being here today. I also want to once again thank Terry Albanese, who has been a phenomenal contractor with our grant program. She's helped us and make sure that we have grown the program, and I'm grateful for her help as one of our team members. The Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, as Brigitte said, has been in this community for over 75 years. And I want to tell you a little bit that their mission is to manage the sale of distilled spirits by promoting excellence in customer service, fiscal responsibility, operational effectiveness, compliance with the laws that govern the sale and use of alcoholic beverages, and creating community partnerships to improve public health and safety. That's the part I get to do, which I'm really grateful to be able to do. And as Brigitte said, in the board's 75-year history, they have given more than $107 million back into the community to great nonprofits such as Healthy Charlotte Alliance to do that work to help with focus on alcohol and substance abuse, education, prevention, treatment, and research. And so as a Charlotte native, I've seen firsthand how our community has grown and evolved, but especially around the health issues and disparities that impact citizens inequitably based on differences in social determinants in health. Determinants is social connectedness, and the degree to which individuals or groups of individuals have and perceive a desired number or quality and diversity of relationships that create a sense of belonging and being cared for, valued, and supported. That's social connectedness. And so as an important grant partner to the Mecklenburg County ABC Board, Healthy Charlotte Alliance, their programs that address addiction and aging for senior citizens who may be tempted to self-medicate for depression, anxiety, feelings of isolation, or other stresses are crucial to our community for an often overlooked target population. And the Alliance's programs provide key awareness, resources, and next steps on how to seek help for seniors around the heightened impact of alcohol and or substance abuse as they age, where many feel that lack of social connectedness. Unfortunately, I personally have experienced this in my family firsthand and with aging relatives, and know why this work is so important and vital to help elevate the quality of life for seniors as they experience those transitions of life changes around aging. And once again, I want to thank your partnership of Healthy Charlotte Alliance and the programming that address these very issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. We certainly appreciate your time and your efforts today and your candor. And one time for the Charlotte natives. I'm a Charlotte native here. Any other native Charlotteans in the audience? All right. People are forever calling us unicorns because they say we don't exist because the city has become one of transplants, but we're here. So just wanted to deviate shortly to give a shout out to all the natives here in the audience. You know, the 75-year impact of the Mecklenburg County ABC Board is remarkable, and today's fun and informative program is just another example of how they are committed to investing in our community, and so we are grateful for their support. And Healthy Charlotte Alliance really felt like it was important to convene this program around healthy living and alcohol all lifelong as we face different challenges with alcohol at various phases in our lives. And often, it's our seniors who face incredibly challenging life factors that can sometimes contribute to turning to alcohol overuse later in life. Retirement, financial strain, death of a loved one, trouble sleeping, mental and physical decline. All of these are challenging aspects of aging and that many of us will ultimately face. So today is going to be educational and informative, but we are also going to have some fun, and we want you to learn about how alcohol impacts you differently as you age, safety impacts, interactions with prescriptions, impacts of COVID, right? Because as we are now back outside, if you will, a lot of us may have either witnessed or ourselves struggled with different coping mechanisms, right? When we were all isolated and in our homes and perhaps saw, firsthand what a lot of our seniors face all the time, right? As they tend to be more isolated and off by themselves. We're also going to talk about signs that you can look for that someone you love may be abusing alcohol and what to do. We have several presenters that are going to come forward, and then we're also going to bring them up for a Q&A at the end of the program. So if you have questions, absolutely jot those down so that you can ask them at the end. As I said, this is going to be educational, but we are going to have a lot of fun too. You got to stay till the end, though, for the fun surprise. It's kind of like you got to be present, right? In order to do that. So let's get started. First, I want to introduce our first two co-presenters. I'm talking about Dr. Jennifer Woodard and Dr. Deanna Mangieri-Ross. Dr. Mangieri-Ross serves as a specialty medical director of geriatrics for Atrium Health. She received her degree from the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine and is double board certified in geriatric medicine from Wake Forest University and internal medicine from Temple University. Exactly, and I'm not finished. She is a fellow of the American College of Physicians with clinical interest in falls prevention, polypharmacy, and the diagnosis and treatment of dementia and delirium. When not working, because hello, she does the heavy lifting professionally. She also enjoys spending time with her husband and their two children, attending fine arts events and supporting groups. I mean, clearly, I'm not doing enough with my life. I need to catch up with Dr. Mangieri-Ross. And Dr. Woodard also brings a huge amount to the table. She's board certified in family and geriatric medicine, specializes in dementia, caregiver support, delirium, polypharmacy, and inpatient geriatric consults. She was a finalist for the Atrium Health Teal Acorn Innovator of the Year Award. She was the first person in her family to attend college and was drawn to science, but she has always had a desire to serve others. And so for her, medicine is not just a calling, it's also a privilege. And she enjoys forming personal relationships with her patients and their caregivers to support them in any way that she can during stressful times. And she also has a passion for teaching as well. And with a grant from Duke Endowment, Dr. Woodard is leading research to start virtual clinics in targeted rural communities, providing a direct communication link between dementia patients, their families and caregivers, and their healthcare resources. She received her medical degree at the Medical University of South Carolina and completed her residency at Mountain Area Health Education Center, and she followed that up with a couple of fellowships. University of North Carolina and Northwestern University. She loves to spend time with her husband, their French bulldog, and travels, cooks, attends fine arts and cultural events, and cheering on the Carolina Panthers. Well, you got to give it up for these two ladies. Show them some love as they come forward.
Hello, thank you for the warm welcome today. I do want this to be a fun presentation, not a lecturer. I will qualify it by saying born and raised, I'm an Italian. You see the last name Mangieri. I was raised Catholic, and both of those stereotypes fit when it comes to alcohol use. My family celebrates with alcohol. We mourn with alcohol. We relax with alcohol. And so today's conversation is more not so much about the right and wrong or drawing a line or taking a stance, but just to understand some differences as we age, where alcohol's involved, some differences in gender and how we metabolize things, and to just be able to learn so that we can make conscious decisions about healthy habits at all stages of life. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer, as I know that some of the slides and such that we go through will look like they're tilted a little one way or the other, but let's keep it informative and fun. Okay?
Sounds great.
All right, so I just wanted to start off, and I hope that you all will jump in with raising of some hands. We're going to start off with a little quiz today, and you'll see some of these questions up on screen, but we want to talk a little and see where we're coming from in terms of our knowledge about alcohol and some of the misconceptions. So let's have, for the first question, a show of hands if we believe that a little bit of alcohol can help us get a good night's sleep. So for those in the audience that think that that is true, let's see a showing of hands. I see at least one. Anybody else feel like a little is helpful? Okay. All right, I see a few. Good, okay. All right, let's look at question number 2. Women can't hold their alcohol as well as men. Do we have a belief? Let's raise hands if we think that that's true. Okay, all right, that's good. It's about half and half, it looks like here. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. Question number 3, alcohol consumption can help prevent us from getting cognitive impairment or memory loss as we get older. All right, I'm gonna say, put a show of hands up. I've seen studies in the news as a dementia doc, and we see it talked about a lot, where we've talked about it does help, it doesn't help, so it's okay if you were to raise your hand on that one. Okay, and then the final one, during our COVID pandemic, people cut back on their alcohol consumption. Oh, I hear a bunch of naysayers. Nobody that wants to stand in solidarity? Okay. All right, well, we're going to get to those answers as we go through today's presentation and help everybody to feel confident raising their hand one way or another by the end.
Okay, perfect. So when we talk about alcohol, let's first just talk about some numbers and how many people drink alcohol. And when I say this, I'm not talking about problematic drinking or alcoholism. I'm just talking in general how many people consume alcohol. And it's about 50% of older adults over age 65 consume some amount of alcohol. And among those, about 14.5% drink more than the recommended weekly allowance. So we're going to talk about what recommendations are for alcohol consumption, but first let's talk about what is a standard drink, because I think that this is something where if you go out to a restaurant, you may realize what you are receiving is not actually medically what we define as a standard drink. Maybe more, maybe less. I'm sure everybody's seen those images online of the really big wine glass that holds a whole bottle of wine and says, I only have one drink a day. So that's obviously way more than one drink of wine. So the big ones on here, standard drink is 1 can, 12 ounces, so the soda size, not the mega one, of beer, 5 ounces of wine, so just for reference, the 1 wine bottle should have 5 glasses of wine in it. And then if you're doing liquor, that's 1.5 ounces. So, and then in here it also shows you like if you're drinking cordials or fortified wine, those are a little bit higher, but just gives you the different amounts in healthcare, what we consider our standard drink size. So what?
Like your level of drink? Is that your size of wine glasses? Pretty standard? Okay, we'll see. All right.
So when we talk about kind of recommendations about how much is drinking, we really divide it into kind of 3 categories around the recommendations. So the first one is your low risk drinking. So this is considered moderate drinking or low risk for an alcohol related problem. If you're over age 65, then this is going to be less than 1 drink on a single day or less than 7 drinks in a week. If you're under age 65, it varies based on gender. So females, lower numbers, less than 1 drink a day, or less than 7 in a week, so similar to that 65 one. For men, though, the recommendation there is less than 2 per day or less than 14 per week. You can see in the middle, when we get into sort of heavier drinking, those numbers go up. And then we also want to define binge drinking. So binge drinking is where you're looking at kind of one setting or one day, how much you're drinking. And for females, that's going to be considered binge drinking if you're having more than 4 drinks an occasion, or for men if you have more than 5.
All right, so we've all had, or most of us may have had a cocktail at some point in our life, maybe 2, 3, more than that. And as we are drinking, we want to know what effects is alcohol having kind of short term? I'm out with my friends, I'm having some beverages. What's happening in my body as I'm consuming a few drinks? So I want to just point out a few things. I think most folks will relate to this slide, but we want to see that as we're drinking alcohol over time, our heart and our blood pressure are going up during those moments. So if we're somebody that is working hard to control things like our heart rate or our blood pressure, it might make things a little bit more difficult. We see as we're drinking that we get more blood flow to the skin. Some of you all may know somebody who has a little bit of rosacea or gets those red, pleasant, flushed appearance as they're drinking. That's more blood flow going to the skin. And as we get more blood flow to the skin, we also start losing more of our body heat. So internally, we become cooler overall with a temperature. The alcohol is absorbed in our stomachs and in our small intestines. And so most of the time, if we're drinking responsibly, that's just kind of happening quietly. If we absorb too much or put too much in our stomachs for it to absorb, then we sometimes will become sick with vomiting and such. The liver starts to gradually break down alcohol at a rate of 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce per hour. So you see, depending on how much wine, how much of those cordials, the beer, et cetera, that we're drinking, we know that it's going to take a bit for the liver to do its work for each subsequent drink. And then the kidneys begin to produce more urine, right? Everybody has said, I've, quote, broken the seal, and now I'm going back and forth to the restroom a lot. And so our body inevitably starts to lose more water as a result of that. So I think these are what's happening as we're enjoying a beverage or two. So we asked, can men hold their liquor better than women, as we've heard quite a bit historically, and the answer is yes, and we're going to look at this kind of in terms of differences if we compare 2 similar sized, aged, etc., male and female. We'll see some differences. So the first one is that we have this chemical in our bodies called ADH, and it's the enzyme that our body produces to metabolize the alcohol. Men have these very active, fast forms of this ADH, and they have it in both their stomachs so that they can actually kind of, for lack of a better term, block absorption of alcohol by almost 30% in the stomach. And they also have this chemical present in their livers. So we've got this present in 2 locations in gentlemen, and it's a really active form of the enzyme. Unfortunately, in women, we don't have this enzyme in our stomachs. So we're already down. We're absorbing everything that's coming in. We can't really block it there. So we're down partially in that aspect. And then the second piece is that the enzyme that we have in our livers works a lot slower than our male counterparts. And so that leads overall into slower metabolism for us. The second piece to look at is that alcohol likes to go into spaces in the body that are filled with water, and it kind of avoids, for lack of a better term, areas of fat. And again, for people, if we compare them of similar age, body composition, etc., we know that men generally have more water in their bodies and less fat, so that the alcohol gets a lot more dilute. And the reverse is true for females. So we have less water in our total body compositions and more fat. And so this alcohol is much less dilute. So there are some gender differences that we're up against, male versus or female versus male, when we're consuming beverages.
And not only are there differences in gender with alcohol, there are things that change as we get older. So as people get older, you become more sensitive to the side effects of alcohol, whereas a drink when you're younger may have made you a little bit wobbly or unsteady, may have slurred your speech a little bit. That can be much more significant as we age. Certainly more so in women than men. We kind of want to get that point across, so we have it on this slide as well. And then over time, the amount that you were drinking when you were younger may not have been problematic at all. But as you age, if you're drinking that same amount, it can be problematic because of interactions with medications and how you're absorbing the alcohol and things like that. So you definitely want to be aware of these changes that can happen as we're getting older. So we talked about what the recommendations are for how much you should have to drink to be considered kind of moderate or low risk or high risk or binge drinking. But like Dr. Mangieri said, we see all these studies all the time. Is alcohol helpful? Is it not helpful? Is it beneficial? How much should we have? What's the safe dose of alcohol? And honestly, there's not an established recommendation for this. We know it's lower in females. We know in some patients they should have no alcohol. So patients who maybe have liver disease or pancreatic disease or younger people who are pregnant, obviously there's different things where they shouldn't have alcohol at all, or they may interact with meds. So you kind of have to weigh the benefits that we're going to talk about, because we're going to go through some different conditions and talk about alcohol's effect on those. So you have to weigh that against the risk of consuming alcohol. But like we said, we want to make this kind of fun and interactive, so we want to talk about ways that we don't want to say stop drinking totally, but we want you to drink healthy, so we want to talk about some healthy ways to drink. So if you are drinking, a big thing is to make sure you're doing what you're doing right now, and that's eating. You don't want to drink without having some food with it. Water, staying hydrated is also really helpful, like we talked about with the percentage of water in the body. That helps as well, kind of dilute things. Want to tend to try not to drink for emotions. So don't drink because you're angry or upset or lonely. And then a new trend now is mocktails, and I think this is fantastic. I don't know if you all have heard about all the Sober Curious or all the movements that are going on, but we're seeing a lot more mocktails on menus. And if you don't know what a mocktail is, it's a non-alcoholic cocktail. So I love that this is happening, because I remember a few years ago I was out to dinner with my best friend. She was pregnant. We were at a very fancy steakhouse in Indianapolis where she lives, and she asked for a mocktail. And the waiter looked at her and said, "Do you mean juice?" And I just thought, oh my gosh, like how insulting, you know? What if she had a problem? What if it wasn't because she was pregnant? And so seeing this movement towards like celebrating mocktails and being sober and curious like that, I just read last week there's a new bar opening in Uptown Charlotte that's only gonna serve mocktails. So I think that's a really good way to still socially engage and have that, but you know, not drink as much alcohol. And then reward yourself for not drinking. Use that money that you're spending on alcoholic beverages for something else. Stay healthy, do fun things, so that kind of thing is really good. Okay.
So Dr. Woodward and I are both cognitive doctors amongst other work that we do. And so every day that we work in clinic with patients who are coming in with memory loss, cognitive impairment, dementia at all stages, everybody wants to know, is it safe for me or for my loved one to drink? Does alcohol kill brain cells? So I will tell you that alcohol does not, in fact, kill the brain cells, but when we're consuming, even in small amounts, it does, in fact, interfere with the communication pathways of the brain. And so I don't think it would be a surprise if we look at a few of these, the areas of the brain that are affected most while we're consuming alcohol, and even with long-term use. Balance becomes more difficult to control. Kind of righting ourselves in situations that we should be able to, and so we do sometimes see more likelihood of falling or near falling or stumbling. We see a change in memory, and very specifically, we start to have trouble converting our short-term memories over to long-term memories. So if you ever had a time, maybe no judgment in high school, college, something where you had a blackout, or you know somebody that's had a blackout and you don't remember instances of what happened that night, it's because the brain stopped converting that new information into long-term memory. And so this is a real one for us, and we see this happening. Folks start to have trouble with their word finding. Maybe they slur a little bit more, so speech is impaired. And then judgment, or our filter, kind of gets turned down or turned off while we're drinking, so that we don't always make the most sound statements or decisions or things, which, again, in early years we might laugh off, but in later years may have some consequences. So I know we're eating, and this is, it's a brain. It might be a little much, but I wanted to show you the top diagram in A, you'll see is the brain of a normal aging individual. For lack of a better term, we say there's gray matter and white matter. The gray matter is the stuff that looks like the meat. The white matter is the stuff that looks like our crevices or the lines in between. And you'll see brain of a healthy older person pretty intact. For those who are coming into our clinic at different stages with Alzheimer's, this is the brain that everybody's worried as they get older. I don't want dementia. I've dealt with somebody with dementia. This is the brain I do not want. Help me do anything I can to avoid this. And you'll notice here that there's less of that matter or meat. Those crevices are getting deeper and forming there, and the brain overall is starting to shrink in size. I think what we don't think about enough is what are other things that I'm doing in my life, including heavy alcohol use over time. What is that doing to my brain? And so the bottom one, although it is extreme, it's a person who's had really heavy alcoholism during the course of their lives, but you'll see the significance of how everything is really shriveled and atrophied over time. Alcohol does not kill your brain cells, but what it does do is keeps us from building new brain cells and forming new ones. And if we don't keep forming and building new brain cells, then we see that shrinkage.
And so patients who have disorders of alcoholism, or alcoholic use disorder is what we term it now, they can get a certain type of dementia. So everybody knows dementia is associated with memory loss, cognitive impairment. There's lots of different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common type, but dementia due to alcoholism is also a type of dementia. The good news is that when you stop drinking, if you have this type of dementia, you don't see a progression in your cognitive symptoms. So your memory doesn't get worse once you stop drinking. If you have an Alzheimer's dementia, the memory gets worse over time. There's nothing that we can do to stop that. So this is one of the benefits for making sure that we know if somebody's drinking too much and helping them to try to cut back or stop drinking.
All right, so a next kind of commonality is that we know that We often drink as a result of mood that can be subpar, that we're going through stressful things in life. We're depressed, we're isolated, we're anxious, and we find that alcohol may be a bit of a friend. I think, or to those who do consume alcohol, you know, as you get relaxed and you're enjoying life, there's a bit of a euphoria that comes as well, a bit of a relaxation mode, a time where everything kind of feels okay. And so we acknowledge that, and we know from this slide that as we're drinking, a lot of chemical reactions are happening, and this is taken way down so that I don't bore you to death during a lunch talk. But we know in general that as we're initially drinking, alcohol causes us to release our happy neurotransmitters, our dopamine friends, our serotonin friends. And so we're having a drink or two, we're releasing a lot of these feel-good chemicals, and here we are, as the slide shows, we're feeling bliss, sometimes maybe even a little euphoria. It feels good, so we keep drinking. But as we keep drinking, our body is unable to keep releasing that same level of these happy neurotransmitters. They become depleted. You've burned the gas down from kind of running that engine hard for a while. And so those happy transmitters become depleted. And sometimes our body stops, the effect of it gets blunted. And now we end up with depression and anxiety. And so for those who are already suffering or prone to depression and anxiety, we can really get in this cycle. So we see that we are drinking to relax, we feel better for a while, then those happy chemicals are depleted, and here we go now with worsening anxiety and depression.
And so because of that cycle, patients who do have alcohol dependence or abuse, they are 3 times more likely to have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder such as depression, anxiety, increased risk of suicide. All of those are affected, as well as sleep.
Okay, so is alcohol good for our hearts? Again, this is a really popular news topic, and every other week we can find a study that says one way or the other. It is good, it's good in moderate amounts, it's good in low amounts, you shouldn't drink at all, and studies keep going back and forth. What do we know about alcohol and heart health? Well, we know that mild to moderate consumption of alcohol over time does help to raise those good cholesterol levels. People come out, my mom is a avid wine drinker, we'll call it, and doesn't know exercise whatsoever, and comes out proudly with her cholesterol panel. My HDL is 90, and we're happy about that. I will tell you that our happy heart will say exercise will raise your HDL equally well. So we can do a little combination of it, but we can raise those numbers, and we can do good things for the heart in the absence of alcohol as well. If you're a drinker, boy, for a long time we heard all the trends about resveratrol, red wine specifically. I'm drinking red wine, it's for my heart, this is what I need, it's got good antioxidants. Good, because I'm not really a drinker, I just drink the red wine. And I hear that, we hear that too, just the red wine, it's part of my Mediterranean diet. And it's true, it is, it's part of all those things. And it can be healthful in some ways. And so we do know that it has antioxidant effects, we know that it has some other effects that benefit our heart. But I don't ever want somebody to drink it just for that purpose, because in that aspect, we can kindly remind that the other things in that Mediterranean diet, like fruits, vegetables, and even our old friend grape juice, which we kind of abandon after we're 4 years old, has those same antioxidants. So there are some alternatives there. Excessive alcohol intake, that either means we're drinking every day or we're drinking large amounts when we do drink, does in fact make it more difficult to control blood pressure. We talked about that, blood pressure's going up as we're drinking. The alcohol can cause heart muscle weakness, which in medical terms we call cardiomyopathy. It can, in extreme circumstances, lead to heart failure and to stroke. And so I promised that I wasn't going to draw a line in the sand and say, we are drinking, we're not drinking. We just want to know how to drink healthfully. But I will say most cardiologists, most internists, most geriatricians, like myself, will say we really should abstain from alcohol entirely if we're being treated for heart arrhythmias like atrial fib, atrial flutter, tachycardias. We have pacemakers, ICDs, et cetera, in place, and we really should be abstaining from alcohol if we have a history of heart failure. Okay, then I have one more to go through because I know that everybody thinks, including those in my family, that having a nightcap helps us to sleep at night. And forgive me a second, let me just put, oops, let's go backwards. Okay, so there is some truth that alcohol helps, and it helps us to initiate sleep at night. It shortens what we call sleep latency, which is the time from when your head hits the pillow till you fall into sleep. And so we do know that for those who consume alcohol, that it takes you less time to fall asleep. The problem becomes that we know after we've had adult beverages that we have a loss of this deep, slow wave sleep during the night. And that's when the body is kind of turning everything off and working on rest and repair. So we have a decrease in that time that we're healing, for lack of a better term, and we're decreasing the time in our REM sleep, which is our dream sleep. And during that period of time, that's when we're working on memory. That's when we're storing energy for the next day. And so although we get to sleep faster, we're actually hindering our sleep during that night of rest. And so I added a little piece here. Will a small amount of alcohol affect my sleep? And you'll see that low amounts will decrease your sleep overall quality that night by about 9%. At moderate levels, which can be 2 drinks in the course of a night, we worsen our sleep by almost 25%. And if we really had a good celebratory night and a lot of alcohol consumption, we can affect our sleep by almost 40%. And so you can imagine if this is something that you practice every night, a cocktail or a beverage, you're kind of cutting yourself a little bit short on that quality of sleep long term.
So just some other general things that alcohol can have effect on. So overall mortality or death, this is associated with excessive alcohol consumption. So patients who have disordered drinking can definitely see higher mortality rates. And then medications, I know our pharmacy colleagues are coming up next to talk about this, but there's lots of interactions to be aware of between alcohol and medication, so even over-the-counter and supplements and herbal remedies, so definitely make sure you're talking with your healthcare provider about what you're taking in alcohol. And now we're gonna kind of shift and talk a little bit about what do we do if we're kind of worried about somebody's drinking or if we wanna screen for alcohol high-risk drinking. So one of the most common screenings that we use in healthcare is called the CAGE assessment. So it stands for cutting back, annoyed, guilty, and eye-opener. So it's 4 questions. If you answer yes to any of these 4 questions, then it indicates you may have some high-risk drinking. And we're gonna talk about what to do if that's the case, but these are the 4 questions. Have you thought about cutting back? Do you get annoyed when somebody asks you or criticizes your drinking? Have you ever felt guilty about drinking? And do you need an eye opener, so that thing first thing in the morning to get you over a hangover, steady your hands or nerves? So when we talk about alcohol abuse, there are some risk factors, and a lot of the risk factors have to do with socialization. So the first one has to do kind of around social isolation. And this is why we saw a really large increase in the amount that people were drinking during the COVID pandemic, because everyone was isolated. And so they kind of turned to that to help with mood. Other types of isolation, bereavement, if you're grieving the loss of a loved one, if you're divorcing or separating, if you don't have a network, if you've moved and you don't have friends or you don't have a religious affiliation, you've been forced to retire, so you've lost your job and your friendships there, all of those can lead to isolation, which then can increase the risk of alcohol abuse. And just like isolation, social isolation can cause it, so can just having a lot of social things going on. So if you think about it and you have a lot of social interactions and things, that tends to increase the likelihood, if you're going out with friends, that you may have a drink. Other risk factors can be that you have a history of substance abuse, family history, Caucasian, younger ages, female gender, and then smokers, because people tend to smoke and drink at the same time, and then underlying mood disorders like depression or anxiety. As we talked about, they're common with alcohol, but they also increase your risk of having problematic drinking. And then if you're having issues with pain or disability or impaired mobility, you can't get around, those things can also be risk factors. So if you're worried about someone or yourself and that you're drinking too much, there are some things that are signs that someone is drinking kind of heavily or problematic. So some of that can be sleep disturbances, mood swings, frequent irritability, depression, suicidal thoughts. You can also have physical symptoms, so nausea and vomiting, poor coordination or balance trouble, and you can often see a tremor or a shake in patients. You also can see some of the cognitive changes we've touched on, like confusion and disorientation, short-term memory loss, kind of drowsiness or that slurring, and then decreased reaction times. And then you may notice social changes. So you may notice that people become socially withdrawn. They don't want to go out. They're having kind of fights more with their family, or abusing other medications, asking for prescription refills sooner than are needed. But there is help, so there's lots that we can do if someone's having problematic drinking. There are support groups. You can definitely talk to healthcare providers who can help you with treatment options, including medications. Your local area agencies and social service agencies can help with treatment options and support groups. Counselors can help with alcohol problems. There's both individual, group therapy counseling, very beneficial. And then 12-step programs have great evidence behind them, like Alcoholics Anonymous, that offers support for people who want to stop or quit drinking. And then if you're concerned about a family member's drinking, what we recommend is kind of taking this 3-step approach to talking with them. So the first one is to talk, and you really want to do this when they're sober. So you don't want to bring it up while they're drinking. You want to do it in a kind of non-judgmental way. Try to avoid using labels like alcoholic or alcoholism, but just talk to them and express your concerns. And then number 2, offer help. So offer to go with them to a group session or an AA meeting or to their provider's office to talk about options. And then the third thing, which I think is really important, is to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because we have to remind ourselves that we can't change the other person. We can talk to them, we can make them aware that we're worried about their drinking problem, we can offer that support and help, but we're not gonna be able to stop it, so we can't put that pressure on ourselves. We have to help kind of lead them there, but we can't force them to drink, for the expression. In terms of treatment, there are lots of different modalities that can be used to help treat people who are drinking too much. And the big thing is it's really not a one-size-fits-all. What works for someone may not work well for the other person, but it includes counseling and psychotherapy, education, support groups. You can go for inpatient rehab programs, outpatient rehab programs, and there's prescription medications as well that can help people to cut back and quit drinking. And then if you need more information about resources and things, these are great resources. The NIH booklets I think they were going to give out today. Al-Anon is for family members of people who have alcohol problems. Alcoholics Anonymous is another great resource. So just some options there, and definitely you can talk with your healthcare providers as well. So I think now we're going to get back to our true and false and see if we hopefully instilled some wisdom today.
And I will do a ploy the same way Brigitte mentioned earlier, that we are endorsing counseling for all different reasons. We may not have what we feel is an alcohol use problem, but we may be concerned that we're on the border, or we may have a loved one that's there. counseling is a great place to start. And if COVID did one thing really well for our communities, it's that we learned how to do counseling in all new ways. The old way of having to go to an office, I have to interrupt my workday, I have to see a counselor, I may like them, I may not, maybe I'm laying on the psychiatry couch, etc. Those kinds of ways that we pictured it have changed. And so we refer a lot of people to Psychology Today, is it psychologytoday.com, which is a really easy place to go online. You put in who you are, what preferences you have. I want a religious counselor. I prefer non-denominational. I want a male. I want a female. I want transgender. It can be anything. I want them local. I want them out of state. And it matches you up with really good ones along the way. So whatever issues you may have or things that you want to talk through, it could be alcohol, it can be other things. We know that we've gotten really good at doing things virtually, in person, combination, all kinds of stuff. So just putting an extra ploy or plug in for that because I do still see especially with the current generation, although it's changing a little bit, that seniors are still hesitant because of some of those prior misperceptions of what counseling looks like. So we are going to cycle back now and see if we can get better show of hands for our fact or fiction questions. So the first one, a little bit of alcohol can help us to get a good night's sleep. Unfortunately, we have to give that one a bad buzzer. That is a false. We fall asleep faster, but the quality of our sleep is worse. And if we do it over and over and over again, then you end up in our office telling me that you have memory or concentration problems, or that you're fatigued all the time and don't know why, or asking for a sleep prescription. So we know that that is not in fact true. The second one is women metabolize alcohol more slowly than men. So do we think that one is true or false? So show of hands for true. Yes, that's correct. Unfortunately, we do metabolize alcohol more slowly, which does not mean we cannot drink. It means we just must know the limits and recognize how it's affecting our bodies. Alcohol consumption can help a person from getting dementia. Nope, not true, right? Because during that time when we're drinking, and especially if it's long term, we're not killing our brain cells, but we're not forming new ones. So we're kind of stunting the regeneration or the growth of the brain at that time. So I just think back to my brain picture, and if you all remember those old commercials, this is your brain, this is your with the egg, and this is your brain on drugs, and they fried it. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of that with the picture of the brain I just showed. And then during the COVID pandemic, most people drank much less alcohol. No, we sheltered in place, and we pulled our masks down, and we enjoyed a lot more alcohol than previously. And so people are coming out of their shells now, but we did see, unfortunately, a significant rise, not only in things like depression, anxiety, some cognitive changes, et cetera, but it was also a time when people surged back to the doctors that we saw blood pressure was out of control, heart conditions and such were harder to get under wraps, and so we've spent a good bit of time in that post-pandemic phase working to get things kind of back on track. All right, and I'm told we're not doing questions now, but if you have any, write them down, and we'll be glad to answer them later. I'll also say, I know Brigida's coming up here, but we were asked, well, what are things other than alcohol in life that might help people to enjoy life more, to relax, to to have better quality of life? And so I believe there'll be some giveaways for some other things that we can do to pamper ourselves a bit. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, give it up one more time for Drs. Woodward and Mangieri. Was that informative? Maybe some things that you didn't know? Yes? Okay. Yeah, for me too. Growing up, and you remember this is your brain and your brain on drugs, right? The frying pan. But they need to bring back one for the brain. And alcohol. Was that jarring for anyone else seeing that? Like, I'm a visual learner. So seeing that made me think about, my glass of wine that I like to have. So thank you guys so much for that informative presentation. Before we move on to our next presenter, I'm really excited to bring him up. But first, we did say that this was gonna be fun, and I don't know about you, but I like stuff that's free 99, right? When I get to win stuff, it makes me hype. So several times throughout the program, we're gonna take a little break and do a giveaway. And this is what I meant by being present to win. So if you got a scoop, no judgment, just know it's not one of those, oh, so-and-so had to leave. So next, we go to the next so-and-so. So I just wanted you to know that. So if you registered to attend today, your name is in this lovely bowl. I'm gonna draw one. If your name is called up, you want to retrieve your prize. I am a journalist by trade, so I'm probably going to be like, trust but verify. I might ask to see some ID. I say that with love. Okay, so first up, we are giving away 2 sound machines. As we just learned, alcohol does impact your sleep, helps you fall asleep faster, but then you get crappy sleep and you wake up crabby, right? That's essentially what it is. And we know that a soothing sound can help us gain a better night's quality of sleep. I'm a new mom. I have a 4-month-old, and let me tell you, that white noise machine is the business. It is why I can proudly say that he is sleeping through the night. Because that white noise machine, I always tell my husband, turn the machine on. Don't go in there without turning the machine on. So, here we go. First winner. I'm not looking. Don't accuse me of it being fixed. You take that up with Aaron. Just kidding. My apologies in advance for the name. As someone who has gotten Bernita, I apologize if I don't get this right. Marianne Falciani? Come on up. Oh, no, she's bringing it to you. You look honorable, Marianne. I'm not going to ask to see your ID. No, I'm kidding. They're just jokes. Okay, here we go. Next winner, Montine Bourne. Tell Montine we so sorry. All right. Tisha Henderson Adams. So sad. Next. Oh, sorry. We'll put that one back in. Yeah. Okay. Sandra Walthall. All right. Yeah. Yes. Enjoy that sound machine. All right. Okay. So we have more giveaways. It's all right here. The proof is in the pudding. So stay tuned. Right now, it is my supreme honor to introduce our next speaker. There is so much power in sharing your story, right? We know that. And so this man's bravery and courage and candor is going to be an inspiration to us all. I'm certain of that. I'm talking about Jim Richardson. He's a native North Carolinian, born in Raleigh, grew up in Wendell, North Carolina, and he is going to bravely share his personal story of alcohol use disorder later in life, as well as his journey to recovery. He played football, graduated from East Carolina University. He's been married to his lovely wife for 51 years. Yeah. I mean, with the Kardashians hopping in and out of marriage, that deserves applause. When you stay in the game with somebody for 50 plus years, half a century, north of half a century, has 2 married sons and 1 precious grandson. And Jim has an incredible support system. Folks who are here today, is that correct, Jim? Yes, ma'am. All right, can Jim's support system, do you mind standing up? Yes. When folks decide to get help, we know it's a team sport. You can't do it without your network, your support system, so we're grateful to Jim's support system for being here today. So please, Jim, y'all, please show him all of the love as he comes forward. Yeah.
If I'd known all that, I don't think I'd have ever had a drink. Wow. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Aaron for inviting me, and thank you very much. Really appreciate that, to tell my little short story here. Let me start off by saying my name is Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. That's the way we greet each other at AA meetings. My drinking problems began about 8 years ago when I retired from work. I was a commercial banker for many years, but when I retired, as the doctor said, I had a lot of free time on my hands. I began to go to sports bars and hang out to watch ball games. I met a lot of drinking buddies at the bars, and we would day drink, as they say, all afternoon. We would buy shots of liquor, endless shots of liquor, drink beer. I'd come home drunk, and my loving wife would have to deal with it a lot, believe me. It all came to a head in June of 2018. I had to be driven home because I had passed out at the bar. At that point, my wife had had enough. She called a good friend of mine, Michael Miles, who's not here today, but he offered help. She called him for help. He has helped many alcoholics overcome this disease, and it is a disease, believe me. With his help, I was admitted to an inpatient center in Greensboro, North Carolina, called Fellowship Hall. And that is a wonderful place, let me tell you. It is a wonderful place. I spent a month there as an inpatient and started my journey to sobriety. It was extremely tough, but it was life-saving. It ended up saving my life. When I got out, came home to Charlotte, I was admitted as an outpatient to a place many of you may know called the Dilworth Center here in Charlotte. It's also a wonderful place. And there I continued my journey back to life without alcohol. Michael, again, our family friend, knew someone at the Dilworth Center, which helped me get admitted. I was an outpatient there for several months, where I met a lot of new friends, wonderful friends, because they were going through the same thing that I went through. I also started going to AA meetings and met more friends. Those friends are the reason I'm here today, because they told Aaron about me. This journey saved my life and my marriage. My family told me from the beginning that they loved me, but I must do this if I'm to remain in the family. I struggled with alcohol until I asked for help. You cannot do this by yourself. I don't care who you are. You cannot do it by yourself. I have a very supportive family. I have friends that came and helped me. Thanks to Mike, I obtained a good sponsor. A sponsor is something you get through AA who helps and guides you. And most of them have been alcoholics, so they know. I now attend weekly AA meetings, met a lot of new people there. And there are hundreds of meetings in Charlotte-Mecklenburg every week. I learned to put certain principles into frequent practice. My wife and I have a short devotional each morning. It's short, but it is good. This arms me for my day ahead, because I know not what I will come in contact with. I believe in myself and my recovery, because others have. I'm honest with myself and my spouse. You must be. I spend time bringing encouragement to others. The more time you do that, the better you feel about yourself. I try to laugh a little each day, which reminds me, what do you call a Christmas wreath made out of $100 bills? Anybody know? You can share this with your friends. A Christmas wreath made out of $100 bills is Aretha Franklin. It also makes me remember about little Johnny. Little Johnny was in the 2nd grade. He kept telling his teacher, I should be in the 4th grade. She said, no, you're a 2nd grade age. You need to be here. He would not stop. He went on and on and on. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed him up by the ear, took him to the principal's office, said, Mr. Johnson, this child says he should be in the 4th grade. He's only 2nd grade age. What do I do with him? Principal suggested, why don't we just give him a little test right here? She said, okay. Johnny, what's 10 times 10? He said, 100. She said, what does a cow have 4 of that I have 2 of? He said, legs. I said, okay. Well, what do you have there in your pants that I don't have in my skirt? He said, pockets. She asked the principal, what do I do with them? Principal said, heck, put him in the 5th grade. I missed 2 out of 3. But seriously, I talk daily to my higher power. I love others even when they don't seem lovable, and you run into them once in a while. I would recommend to anybody having trouble to get an AA sponsor. They really help because they have been there. I remind myself that toughness is in the soul and the spirit, not in muscles or your mind. I tell people that when a thought comes into your mind to help somebody, act on it, because that thought didn't just appear. It was sent to you. So you should be an instrument of your higher power. I was asked during my recovery to make a list of things that I would most miss if I was told you are going to die. And so I made a list. My list was my loving wife of 50 years, my family, my friends, Eastern-style barbecue, morning coffee with my wife, good jokes, and my grandchildren. I currently work at a hospital locally as a patient transporter, and I probably walk 5 to 6 miles every day at work. I meet and talk with a lot of people while I'm working. Some of them are very sad, recovering alcoholics. I always try, while transporting them, to leave them better than I found them. It may take listening to them. It may take a good joke, or it may take praying with them and for them. But I try to get a smile from them before I leave them, somehow. Come to think of it, that's the way it should be every day when you come in contact with somebody. Just smile and see if they smile back. While I'm at work, I carry in my pocket little Hot Wheels cars and trucks and little teeny tiny small dolls. I cannot stand to hear a child cry. And sometimes in the x-ray department, I hear them crying and it just kills me. So I get up, I go take it. If it's a boy, I give him a truck or a car. If it's a girl, I give him a little doll. And when you see that mom's face, she thinks you're an angel. But I cannot stand to hear a child cry. I have discovered certain behavior traits that helped me in the past few years. I developed certain skills needed to stop drinking. I built a strong support system. I worked to recharge my goals. I'm going to reach my goals. And they should be reachable. By now, I know what is and isn't. I cope with and avoid triggers that might cause a relapse. And examples of triggers are drinking buddies, bars, sometimes country clubs, sometimes boredom. In conclusion, I want you to think about these thoughts because they have meant a lot to me. No barrier or no means of measure can define God's limitless love. No far-seeing telescope can bring it into visibility, the coastline of his shoreless supply. No barrier can hinder him from pouring out his blessings. He forgives and he forgets. He creates and he cleanses. He restores and he rebuilds. He heals and he helps. He reconciles and he redeems. He comforts and he carries. He lifts and he loves. He is the God of the second chance. He is the God of the fat chance. He is the God of the slim chance. He makes change possible. Thank you for letting me share my journey.
If I didn't have an infant at home, I would give Jim the biggest hug. Oh, thank you so much, Jim, for your incredible courage in sharing your story, your candor. Actually, a room full of strangers, so we're very grateful and grateful to his family as well for being here. I don't know about you, but I'm convinced that Jim's story is going to help others relate, right? There's so much power, as I said, in sharing your story, and when you do so, you help others feel seen, you help others feel heard, and feel less alone. You know that you're not the only one and that they can reach out for help that will change their own lives. So thank you again, Jim. Before we move on to our next presenter, we're going to do some more giveaways. First, we're going to give away a sweet a Sweets Elderberry Shrub Mixer Bundle, perfect for those mocktails. This item generously donated by Sweets Elderberry. Of course, you've probably heard of elderberry. It's antiviral, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory benefits of amazing superfood. And the winner of this bundle is Liza Tyndall. Yeah? Yeah, all right. Hopefully I said your name correctly, Liza. All right. Oh, I love this next giveaway. A spa feel at home, you know, you can just close the door and shut the world out, shut your family out if you need to do that, just temporarily, you know, no judgment. A set of essential oils, aromatherapy soy candles, again, perfect for creating that calming, serene spa feel at home. And this winner is Luis Rice. All right. Rocking the hot pink. I see you, Luis. You enjoy. All right, our final presenter today. Everybody still with me? You still good? Yes? These presentations have been engaging, right? Informative, as well as, impactful. We know that's one of the missions of the Charlotte Healthy Alliance. You know, I've done a lot of these events over the years. And it's been like watching paint dry in some of them. So I'm so thrilled that this has been so meaningful and impactful. And so our final presenter today is Dr. Sloan Ware. She's going to share with us the impacts of mixing alcohol with some of the most common medications that are taken by seniors. Sloan Ware, this is what happens when there's no teleprompter, right? And you're left to your own devices. She's a pharmacist at Novant Health Mint Hill Medical Center with more than 10 years experience in the hospital pharmacy setting. She previously worked as a behavioral health pharmacy specialist and assisted in pharmacological management of different substance abuse patient populations. She is also dual board certified in No, it's with therapy. What? Oh, okay, I was going to have it right. Pharmacotherapy and psychiatric pharmacy. So please welcome Dr. Ware to the podium.
Thank you for having me and thank you for coming. So this is a brief presentation about alcohol interaction with common medications. So as we age, approximately 40 to 50%, like was said in the earlier presentation, of older adults drink alcohol. More than 90% of older adults take medications. If you're comfortable, do you mind just raising your hand if you take a medication? And this can be anything, a vitamin, something prescribed by your doctor. If you're like me, thriving on allergy medicines during the springtime, so a lot of us. As we age, our body changes, and those changes can cause medications and alcohol to act differently. Some of these changes include pharmacokinetics of alcohol and medications, and that's just a fancy word that describes what the body does to a substance as it moves through the system. Older adults have increased susceptibility to alcohol and medications, and older adults are more likely to suffer from chronic medical conditions for which we take medications. When we talk about medication interactions or medication and alcohol interactions, that's separated typically into two different categories. The first is that fancy word again, pharmacokinetic, which describes what the body does to a drug. And the second is pharmacodynamic, but first I'll talk about the pharmacokinetic ones and common medications that interact with alcohol through these pharmacokinetic processes. So as alcohol enters the stomach, it then moves into the small intestines where it's more rapidly absorbed, differences between men and women like the previous presentation talked about. But medications that move alcohol into the small intestines quicker can then increase or prolong the blood alcohol levels or the effect of alcohol. Two medications that do this are metoclopramide and erythromycin. And I'll just stop here. When I talk about a medication, I typically have the generic or chemical name first, and then in parentheses is the branded name. But if you take a medicine by either of these names, you're at risk for these interactions. So those are our first two drugs. After absorption, substances are then distributed throughout the body so they can go to the place where they work, alcohol and medications. This was kind of mentioned in the previous presentation as well, but some substances prefer fat and some prefer water. Because of these older adults and women have higher amounts of fat and less water. So because of these alterations, older adults are more susceptible to the effects of alcohol and this medication class called benzodiazepines. Some examples are listed there. These are your Xanax, your Valium, Librium, typically used for anxiety disorders and seizures. There's a lot of information about benzodiazepines and them being dangerous in the older adult population, but especially when combined with alcohol. So after distribution, medications and alcohol are broken down by a process called metabolism that breaks the substrates down so that they can then be eliminated. Alcohol is initially broken down by an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. And so medications that inhibit this alcohol dehydrogenase can increase or prolong the effects of alcohol. Medications, examples are listed here. Aspirin is a fairly common medication. And then the next three are medications typically used for heartburn or reflux disease: famotidine, cimetidine, and I put ranitidine in there. It's mostly been recalled from the market, but in case you're familiar with that one. Some more medicines there. The second part of metabolism, sort of that middle part, is acetaldehyde is broken down by acetaldehyde dehydrogenase to then be eliminated. You want to get rid of acetaldehyde quickly because it's sort of a toxic substance that can cause these uncomfortable side effects like nausea, vomiting, flushing because of vasodilation. So there are medications that inhibit this acetaldehyde dehydrogenase that I'll talk about on the next slide. There's two interesting points that I want to talk about, excuse me, with this system is that patients of Asian descent often have a genetic variation in this acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. So even without medication interactions, these patients can experience this sort of uncomfortable side effect. My grandmother is actually Japanese, and her and my uncle both have this, seem to have this variation. And then there is a medication that is used to deter patients from drinking called Antabuse that uses this mechanism so that patients who have substance abuse, alcohol substance abuse issues can take this medication and know that if they drink, they're going to have this side effect. So the medications that interact with alcohol by causing this increase in acetaldehyde, so this flushing, nausea, vomiting side effects are listed here. Quite a few of them, a lot of antibiotics like metronidazole, nitrofurantoin, sulfamethoxazole, the cephalosporin antibiotic class, so anything that starts with the name ceph. Cardiovascular medications like nitroglycerin or isosorbide, and some common anti-diabetic medications like glyburide, glipizide, and chlorpromamide. So the next two slides describe liver metabolism changes based on the amount or frequency of alcohol use. So episodic binge drinking or heavy drinking, so more at a certain time than is usual for that individual, can cause alcohol and the medications to compete for breakdown, so compete for that enzyme activity, so that potentially these medications won't be broken down as quickly and remain in your system longer and have an increased or prolonged effect. Some of these medications are warfarin, phenytoin, that benzodiazepine class again, and then methylphenidate. On the flip side of that, chronic heavy drinking can actually ramp up that enzyme activity so that medications are broken down quicker, so that they're is to actually reduce effectiveness, potentially, of some of the medications. Some of the same ones listed here: warfarin, phenytoin, that benzodiazepine class, propranolol, and some of the antivirals used for HIV/AIDS. And as I mentioned previously, older adults are more susceptible to these changes in levels of medications. So that was all the pharmacokinetic interactions. Now we're going to flip over to the pharmacodynamic, which is sort of the opposite. It describes what the drug does to the body. And these interactions can be additive or antagonistic, and I think this will make sense as I start going through the slides. So for me, the most concerning additive effect of alcohol and medications, or additive interaction of alcohol and medications, is this sedation or impaired function. That benzodiazepine class, again, is there. Some examples listed. That's, again, your Valium, your Xanax, Librium, things like that. Some other sleep aids like Ambien, Lunesta. I think that for the next point, we've all probably read about or heard about this sort of opioid crisis that's going on now, and that these opioid narcotic, sort of heavy pain medications like morphine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, fentanyl are incredibly dangerous on their own, especially combined with alcohol, especially in our older adult population. Some other medications listed there, meds for neuropathic pain like gabapentin or amitriptyline, antihistamines in allergy season. These cough, cold, and flu medications, typically available over the not like behind the counter at a pharmacy, have a lot of different components that can cause sedation. Also, some of them have alcohol within that formulation as well, and then some muscle relaxers. So a second additive interaction between alcohol and drugs would be liver damage. We know that alcohol causes liver toxicity, has liver toxicity, and there are certain medications that are prone to liver damage. Tylenol is the main one. It's readily available. I would assume everybody here has probably taken Tylenol at some point, and it can be toxic in excess and with alcohol. This class of medications called statins, so medications for high cholesterol, that's your Lipitor, Crestor, Zocor, things like that. And then other medications for mood disorders, so duloxetine, atomoxetine, and Depakote. Moving on, another additive interaction of alcohol and medications is gastrointestinal bleeding. So alcohol and certain medications can cause injury to the lining of your gastric system. Probably the most concerning one here is the NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, typically used for inflammatory pain and arthritis. And again, like Tylenol, readily available over the counter, easily accessible. And aspirin is also in this category as well. Dizziness and hypotension, I'm just gonna briefly touch on this one. I think that we all know alcohol can cause dizziness, sort of these postural changes in blood pressure, and there are a lot of medications that cause this as well. This list is not anywhere near all-inclusive, but just something to think about, especially with falls. So increased dizziness, and combined with both of these substances, falling is risky for anyone, especially in our elderly, or older adult elderly population. This next one is a very specific reaction, but it can be somewhat serious, so I just wanted to briefly mention it. Hypertensive crisis, so there is a component in beer and red wine, some alcohol, called tyramine. It's just a natural component found in these things, and it, combined with alcohol, can cause severely increased blood pressure. The class of medications is an antidepressant class called monoamine oxidase inhibitors. It's typically reserved for treatment-resistant depression, so not terribly common, but listed there. And then my final slide with these additive interactions is with diabetes, sort of all-inclusive. So alcohol can cause alterations in blood sugar, your blood glucose. Most anti-diabetic medications also cause these alterations in your blood sugar. Most concerning is hypoglycemia because of that risk for dizziness and falls again. As I previously mentioned, this flushing side effect with some of these common diabetic medications because of the increase in acetaldehyde, so your glyburide, glipizide, chlorpromamide. And then I wanted to touch on metformin. I apologize, I forgot to put the brand name there. It's typically Glucophage. But it can cause an increase in lactic acid. Alcohol can also cause an increase in lactic acid. And it's fairly uncommon, but this lactic acidosis can be a serious medical condition and cause some pretty severe organ damage. This final slide, there's no specific medications here. I just wanted to touch on the importance of realizing that alcohol can adversely affect chronic diseases and interfere with or prevent medications from working, also interfere with diagnosing and monitoring with these medications. So lots of diseases. This is not all-inclusive by any means, but I just wanted to sort of throw that out there for my final bit. So there are lots of risks with the combination of alcohol and medications. I just threw a ton of information at you. Hopefully you got something, but you may still just be thinking, I'm not even sure what she said, but can I drink with my medication? So I have sort of 3 answers to that. One is sort of my cop-out answer, and that it's a very individualized approach to that answer, depending on a lot of the things that were discussed in the previous presentation, what medicine you're taking, how much you drink, what you can tolerate, on and on and on. So that, again, is sort of my easy answer. My second answer is that moderation is key, and that really limiting the amount of alcohol will really limit the severity of these drug interactions. That being said, my third answer is that there are combinations that I think are too dangerous. And for me, let me go back to this. That combination is these bolded ones, the benzodiazepine class of medications and these opiate narcotic pain medications. I advise the risk of combining these medications is not worth the risk. The danger is not worth the risk. So, be honest, ask questions, discuss these risks with your healthcare team, and always remember that older adults are going to be more susceptible to these risks of medication and alcohol interactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ware. I would really appreciate that insightful presentation and nailing the pronunciation of all of those drugs. Like, I definitely recognize the brand names. So very informative, and hopefully folks were able to pull some from that. Okay, we are going to do our Q&A. We definitely wanted to leave time for that. So as our presenters are making their way up here, I'm going to give away 2 weighted blankets. Mama Mac, I gave her a weighted blanket for Christmas, and she has been in hog heaven ever since. So the pressure of a weighted blanket helps to put your nervous system into rest mode, which helps reduce symptoms of anxiety, such as that quickened heart rate or breathing, and providing an overall sense of calm. So here we go. Oh, seriously, the presenters, you guys can come up here. Do you mind? Okay. Thanks so much. All right. Judy V. Yeah, Veras. Okay. And, oh, I done pulled too many names. I'm sorry. Michael Miles. Oh, too bad, so sad. You got to be present to win. Paula Owens. All right. So Paula and Judy, yeah, they're too heavy. Aaron tried, do you know? Take both of them. No ma'am. The Mama Mac could barely pick up the gift bag. I was like, we're not wrapping this. I put it in a gift bag. Yeah, you got to lift with your legs, ladies, when you're taking that out of here. All right, so I want to get to the questions. There's a microphone here, and COVID is still a thing, so try not to touch it. Again, I say that with love. All right, so if you have questions, you can form a line. Don't everybody get up at once. For our panelists, I saw a lot of you taking notes, so if you had a question, now would be the time to ask. Y'all gonna leave me up here tap dancing? No one's gonna get up and ask a question? Oh, thank you. Always gotta have that first one.
You all mentioned the use of medications to inhibit inhibit the desire for alcohol. I've been hearing a lot about that on Sirius XM, Dr. Radio, and they really are promoting that there are drugs out there that are very effective. So I didn't know if this was a question for the pharmacist or for the doctors, but I'll just lay it out there.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, there are 3 that are commonly used. One is that antabuse that I talked about, and it uses that acetaldehyde sort of uncomfortable feeling. So knowing that you're going to have that if you drink deters that. The other 2 are acamprosate and Revia or naltrexone. I don't remember or know if we exactly know how those work or why they work, but definitely to decrease cravings and the desire.
And I'll add to that. I think one other thing that we didn't really touch on, but is important to sort of point out, if you yourself are thinking you're drinking a lot and want to cut back, or you have a family member, the important thing is to make sure you do that with help, because you don't want to stop suddenly. If you're drinking regularly, it does increase the risk of withdrawal. And unfortunately, in alcohol and in those benzodiazepines, that withdrawal can be life-threatening.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question for Jim. Did you ever take any of the medicines like Antabuse or any of the drugs?
No,
So
I
yours
did
was
not.
purely
It's
just psychological?
Strictly alcohol.
Okay.
No.
During recovery, were you asking during recovery
Well, at any time during his recovery.
if you had any assistance of medications
Well, I did when I went to the place in Greensboro. Yes. I mean, the first thing you did for the first 10 days was detox. And they gave you several different things. In fact, they gave me, I discovered a thing for my hair, and that helped me. I mean, for dandruff.
Okay.
Helped me with dandruff, but that was just an
So,
offshoot.
but these
of
were
what it was
medicines
supposed
to
be.
prevent or to treat possible withdrawal or DTs, and not Antabuse or anything like that. I mean, Antabuse is it inhibits the alcohol dehydrogenase aldehyde, and then the effects are immediate, almost throwing up after any alcohol. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right, okay.
Well, it took me several days to detox, and I was going to the pharmacy, and the doctors were helping me, and God knows what they did, but they helped me. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
There's providers, generally even most primary care providers are well enough versed that we can help in the event somebody comes and says, I'm ready to cut down, I have a problem. We've caught you maybe in that CAGE questionnaire that we were talking about. We've opened a discussion about it. And there's medicines from pills that you take every day to help cut cravings, to longer acting injections. I can tell you in my own family, I have a brother who is 8 years or 9 years sober, coming up on his birthday, where early in recovery he was still a functioning alcoholic, and then went into recovery, and we were able to help him afford paying for a monthly shot that helped reduce those cravings, to kind of make him feel armed that he can go out in the world and still be, an attorney and be in social situations, but have a little extra something there while doing the other work of things that you talked about, like regular AA meetings and sponsorship, et cetera. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some of these meds are dirt cheap, some of them are much, much more expensive. So that cost can sometimes be prohibitive, but people kind of make their decision at different points, is it fair to say, in their journey of when they feel like they can let go of some of those things and when they can't. And then I would also say, in many instances, you know, we know certain antidepressants and things, and helping people with, in a healthful way, get a control of their anxiety and depression naturally helps them to be able to cut back on drinking. And so just some simple remedies that we're using that are non-pharmacologic, or maybe some supplements and things to help with sleep and anxiety, and those kinds of things are incredibly helpful. So we can kind of go from low spectrum all the way to interventional. The other piece I would say, both healthcare systems in town, Novant and Atrium, have addiction medicine specialists. They're in clinics. I cannot tell you how many folks come to our memory clinic where previously in medical charts they didn't share the amount of alcohol that they consumed or the history of heavy alcohol use, and we hear a lot of it. And we can get people set up with a regular doctor who can help them on their journey. And so it doesn't always have to be. I realize when you're at a specific place and really hurting, you require that intensive work. But if there's low grade, or we're struggling back, or we've done a program like that, these offices exist. Your medical records are what we call behind glass, which means the average provider taking care of you doesn't see those notes. And you're able to go and to have treatment that's covered under your insurance plans, and it's like any other condition. It's par for the course. So please don't feel like there's a stigma with it anymore. It's part of who you are, and at a current time in life, and we have to take care of the whole person.
You gonna come to the, just so we can make sure that we hear you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I work with a largely homeless population, mostly women and children. I understand from them and from being in this area for quite a while that treatment for the disease of alcoholism is quite expensive. Most of my population is not insured and has not, social determinants do not have access to means to go into treatment. Is anyone aware of how we can refer these people to treatment, or how they can get the help that they need?
So I can speak to it at Atrium. Atrium, Maine, the Carolinas Medical System, has what are called SEED counselors in the emergency department. They're substance abuse education counselors. And they actually are social workers who work with patients who come into the emergency room who are looking for detox or rehab options. So there are some that don't require insurance, or that they can get covered for lower costs, and some of the medications as well. So that's the resource I know about. I don't know if there's others.
Yeah, I mean, within Novant's emergency room, there are those counselors available as well. I mean, I think it's, I think it's a common problem with a lot of disease states. I don't mean to say that it's not. I just, there is help. It's just a matter of finding the right one, and then I guess I'll probably wait a little bit until there's spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if you feel like you can project.
Well, it's not a question so much as a resource, findhelp.org.
Okay.
So findhelp.org is where you go and you can search for different nonprofits and agencies, hospital systems, and all the things to like connect people with.
Findhelp.org. Gotcha. Were there any other questions? Yeah?
Thank you. With so many families caring for relatives or others with dementia, what are the approaches to screening the caregivers for the stress factors or just the the social support or the family interactions that are involved?
So we are trying to get better at that in general primary care practices. And the answer is that we haven't done so well with that so far. Your internist, your family practice physician, they only know what's going on in the family if you share it with them. And so I think that that is an incredible piece, is to use some of that time wisely with them, and when they're checking you over to say, I just want special things have changed in my life. I'm now the caregiver of a loved one, and kind of what some of that, and what the stressors are that go along with it. In our cognitive clinics, we do a caregiver burden score from the day we meet people, and they come to the practice and they have all this paperwork filled out with their loved one or for their loved one, talking about them, and then we hand them another paper, and you can see for the first time it's somebody saying they're actually asking about me and how this affects my life, and what I'm able to do, and we try to follow those scores over time. So, you know, share what you can with your doctors. Again, realize we come in, and if you're my parent, that they come out and they love to email me their numbers, and their numbers all look good and all that, and I say, I don't care. I care how you function in life, how you feel in life, how your mental wellness is as much, and your cognitive wellness, and kind of the whole piece. So just know that the doctor's visit really has to change from just being about your numbers and getting your refills to, I need to talk to you about something, and from there. So we certainly see a good share of drinking affiliated with being a caregiver, whether it's for older folks or whether it's for moms that work like I do and come home, and that second job is really tough. And then now we have that unique population, again, for older moms like me, where I'm sandwiched between caring for my senior parents and my junior young kids, and so the stress really, really lines up. So, you know, you have to bring it up, though, to a provider, or they just won't know. And sometimes we've seen a big trend, I know, with MyChart and all these electronic things that you can shoot your doctor or FYI messages and stuff, but sometimes somebody just bringing me, when they come to see me, a quick short letter that just says, these are just some things that, in case I forget to tell you, I'd like you to know, can be really helpful, because we know we have a short time, but that's nice stuff for us to incorporate into the visit. Anything?
Okay, last question.
Thank you. You all covered interactions with lots of medications and alcohol, and I'm curious about supplements. You know, the homeopathic kind of offerings that are out there that people, you know, take the melatonin and all sorts of things. And I was just wondering if you could speak to alcohol's effect or interaction with supplements.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of answers to that, but I mean, there definitely are interactions. Certain ones can, off the top of my head, cause liver damage. Certain supplements, kava kava is one I can think of. St. John's wort, typically I don't see it as much. So those are the examples that I can think of, but definitely good questions to ask and discuss with healthcare team.
Thanks.
And so I would put a plug in, please bring your supplements.
Yeah.
If you've started taking new ones, and they're branded under all kinds of wacky stuff. I mean, we know the ones in cognitive clinics, but they come in under some really unusual names, and I want to look at the ingredients. There's ones, ginkgo historically has led to increased bleed risk. So you're taking something for your memory and you're drinking, and you might have a greater risk of bleeding and such. And so we just have the privilege of being able to run some of those interactions behind the scenes or get back to you. So I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you got to be transparent with your doctor. It's the same thing in therapy. If you're not being honest with your therapist, you're not getting the full experience. So the same thing with your doctors. So very thankful for our presenters today. Thank you so much for being here. for sharing your knowledge. Jim especially, your courage and your candor. We're grateful for it. So a survey, like 60 seconds. Do us a solid. Tell us what you thought, what you'd like to hear. We would really appreciate it. And I know we drew names for the folks who won a lot of those fun, calming prizes, but everybody gets a gift bag on the way out. I feel like Oprah, you get a gift bag, you get a gift bag, you get a gift bag. An adult coloring book, box of colored pencils, and a box of Sleepy Time tea. So, as well as a resource booklet from the National Institute on Aging. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, a survey, please help us out. Also, if you want to be informed of upcoming events, drop your email on that as well. And if you want to talk about a membership to Healthy Alliance, anyone in the community can be one and can join. So we hope that you will. Thank you so much for a great afternoon. It's been my honor to be on this journey with you, but please let's not let it end here. So fill out that survey. And thank you again to our presenters, to the Mecklenburg County ABC Board, to Myers Park Presbyterian Church for this space. We're grateful. It takes a village. So thank you so much and enjoy the balance of your day.